Hi, this is Gary Zacharias. You're listening to the Apologist Bookshelf. I'm holding in my hands a new, I'll call it a book, but it's actually a graphic novel by Jim Wallace, J. Warner Wallace, and his son Jimmy Wallace. And I'm really interested in this because the last, I would say, comics that I read was when I was a kid. Now, this is a graphic novel, so it's a full-length, 160-page book. It came out in April of 2025, graphic novel, full-color graphic novel. And when I say full color, the colors are amazing. There are drawings of Los Angeles at night that are just knockout beautiful. And the book is called Case Files, and I hope they're going to do more of these. But it's called Case Files, and the subtitle is Murder and Meaning. And so let me just kind of walk through it with you. It's very different, isn't it, than typical apologetics. So I can't really take a chapter out of this. So I'm just going to do one podcast on it, but I certainly recommend it. If you're a fan of graphic novels, you will like it a whole lot. So I guess you know something about Jim Wallace already, J. Warner Wallace. He's been on Dateline a number of times, a cold case detective. He's a speaker, senior fellow at the Colson Center for Christian Worldviews. He's an adjunct professor at Talbot School of Theology, that's Biola, and Southern Evangelical Seminary, among others. Speaks all over the world. We're looking forward to it. He's going to be at our church coming up November of this year, 2025. And he just does an excellent job. He's been there several times in the past. Just got to tell you a real quick story. Before he became really well known, we invited him down to our small apologetics class. It was a class. It wasn't a church. And there are probably 40 people there, 30 or 40 people. And he came. He was very happy to come and interacted. And he is so warm and so personable. Just got to know him and to follow his career and see what he's accomplished. He started off, he was with Stand to Reason, then he went out on his own and just became a terrific speaker and a writer of some wonderful books. Cold Case Christianity is the first one. God's Crime Scene, The Truth and True Crime, and Forensic Faith, and so many good books. And now he's entering a new area with these graphic novels. His son co-wrote it with him. That's Jimmy Wallace, 10-year policeman, has an MA in apologetics. So he's no slouch. He knows the area well, too, when it comes to apologetics. And what a wonderful thing to see a father and son team up, not only in their profession as police officers, but to spread the word of Jesus and to do it in very effective ways. So first of all, I would just suggest you go to coldcasechristianity.com and take a look at the wonderful things they've got available for you there. It's just a treasure trove of apologetics, podcasts, and articles to read. Excellent work, just excellent material that they put out. So they're the authors. I went to Amazon just to see what people said about it because I'll tell you, this is out of my league. I'm not used to looking at graphic novels, and I was just curious to know what some other people had said about it. Well, it's had hundreds of views, and people are giving it 5-star reviews. I mean, that's what it's averaging, 5-star reviews. And people are saying things like it's a page-turner. Somebody else said, great story. They love the artwork, and boy, I say amen to that. I mean, I think about the comics when I was a kid. They were pretty bland. They were kind of washed out colors, obviously been done in a hurry. This is unbelievable. Apparently, The Chosen, that well-known TV and movie, has had a series of graphic novels, and the same people that did that have done this. So I love the fact that the Wallaces did not want to go cheap and just use their names and put out kind of a uninteresting and not particularly well done graphic novel. No, this is really high class. Somebody else said they liked the life lessons that were there. They said there are apologetics that are in here, but it's not blatant, and I agree with that. Somebody said this, it's like going along on an exciting investigative journey guided by compelling characters. That's a good way to think about it. Somebody else said this, good quality print and paper. And again, I think about holding this, and I'm doing it right now, and I'm flipping through some of the pages, And I compare this to the comics when I was a kid. Do you remember those? They were all cheap paper and kind of flimsy. And this is really well done, and the binding is good, so it's going to hold up. And I think people would get a kick out of having a chance to read this. And then somebody else said, thoughtful, not preachy. And I say amen to that. I think that's really important. So let me just tell you a few things about it from my perspective. I have recommended another one of his books in the past called The Truth and True Crime. And it was a little different than what Wallace has done in the past. And, in the past he would take things like, can you trust the New Testament? That was cold case Christianity. Why do we think there's a God? What are some of the reasons? The argument from consciousness, the argument from design, the argument from the beginning of the universe, all these things. And that was in God's Crime Scene. And he's done all these other wonderful books in a traditional apologetics nature. When he did The Truth and True Crime, I loved the kind of new angle he took, and that was this, that Christianity offers the best way to live for a human being. If you want to flourish as a human being, there are excellent principles taken from the Bible, then taken from the New Testament, and that's what he did. So it was not arguing, in a sense, for reasons why we can trust that Jesus lived and all that kind of stuff. It was, imagine that Christianity was true. What does it do for people? And so he's got statistics, and he's got stories, and he's got all sorts of data, and it's a wonderful read. In fact, I think when he comes in November, I think we're going to have him do one of the chapters from that book, The Truth and True Crime. It really impacted my wife and me when we heard him speak on that before. All right, well, just to give you some ideas of what's in this, and this will be a little shorter podcast than usual, because like I said, I don't want to go through a particular chapter and start giving away all the plot angles and who said what and things like that, because it does not lay out in an argumentative format some case to be made for the truth of Christianity. It's very indirect in this book, but it's powerful. So just a few things, just kind of, it won't be in any particular order, but just as I thought about it when I read it. For one thing, it shows the bad side of drugs. Now, do people believe there's a bad side? Sure, they do. But this illustrates that with one of the characters. So the bad side of drugs. It talks about a cop who, in a sense, is dreading retirement. He's put in a lot of hours, and he could retire. Maybe he should retire, but he hangs in there. And I think about a lot of people who wonder, well, if I retire from, fill in the blank, whatever it is, if I retire, where's my worth? Where's my value? I've been used to seeing my name on a desk, or I've been used to seeing my name in the papers. I'm used to getting a healthy paycheck, or I'm used to having coworkers smile at me and tell me good morning, and have people come in and acknowledge me that I'm in some sort of position of authority, and I'm going to lose all that if I retire. So I know that's an issue for a lot of people. And so there's a little bit of that in the book here. One of the issues that the book deals with is, what are we? What are people? There's an individual that thinks we're just biological machines. And in other words, life is basically meaningless. You just go through the motions and try to, not have a bunch of pain in your life. There's also some information about how police work. If you have reasonable suspicion, probable cause, proof beyond reasonable doubt, things like that. So that's covered in this graphic novel as well. There are people in here who feel like they're worthless, and others who work with them and interact with them. So there's an issue about what gives life value. Now, one person says we're just tiny insects in a hunk of rock hurtling through space. There's no meaning, no purpose to any of our lives. And I think that's really important to just hold on here for a second and think about. That's what we're hearing today. It is so sad. People don't anymore, they don't really think about anything beyond this world, right? There's nothing out there. There's nothing beyond what we can see right here. And once we give up on the idea of another dimension, a spiritual realm to life. Once we give up on that, what are we? We're just walking around. We're just a chunk of meat. And, that comes and that goes. And so what's the point? Why are we doing this? What makes people worth anything? Do you have to have a good-sized paycheck? Does that give you value? Does that give you the urge to keep going? Anyway, so there's another character that comes into this story who's a Bible believer, and he interacts with some of the characters. I won't go into detail there. But one person says this. I thought this was an interesting quotation. You can choose the wrong things, even good things, like law enforcement, and miss the better things. He says you can craft a life, yet miss the point of living. He says you can spend time trying to make a name for yourself, but remain a stranger to God. So I thought that was an interesting way to put it. Obviously, a lot of us pick the wrong things, and we go down the wrong roads, and we're punished for it, or we ruin our life somehow. Okay, but even if we pick good things, in this case, law enforcement or education or business or whatever it is, we can pick something good and we can be honest and above board, but maybe there's something beyond that we're missing. And that we can craft a life. Yeah, we can craft a life. We can form a life here. We can have a family. We can have a house. We can have money in the bank. But what's the point of all of that? Maybe we're missing that. And he says you can spend time making a name for yourself, but you remain a stranger to God. So, is it all about you and your resume in the grand scheme of things? So what is it that makes human life valuable? Is our worth centered only on what we do? A lot of people believe that today. And imagine once something like that gets taken away. Maybe we see our value as our health. Well, we don't have our health every day throughout our whole life. Maybe we get our worth from people, like a husband or a wife or a good friend or a child, but they're not always going to be there. Maybe it's the job we hold, right? So there are a lot of ways we try to gain value as humans, and those things can be stripped away from us. And what's left? Well, if there's no God, there's nothing left. We have nothing to hold us up. So I think this is an excellent book that you might want to consider. I would say it's for adults. I looked at, like I said, many of the reviews on Amazon, and most of the people there indicated it's a great read. A few of them said for adults. I didn't see anybody that said young kids. Now, maybe older youth, 16 and above, 17 and above, something like that. But I think it's really aimed, just so you know, I would consider it more for adults. There's a little bit of violence in there. There are deaths that take place. Now, is it bloody and guts coming out and all that kind of stuff? No. But there's an autopsy scene, which is not particularly pleasant. There's information about police work that some younger kids might not care about. There are no young characters in the story at all. These are all adults. Which, again, is fine for adults, but I'm just saying, just because it's in a graphic format, it doesn't mean that anybody who can look at pictures and enjoy them is going to enjoy this book. It may go over their head, and it depends how they've been raised, and depends what movies they've seen, but they may react to some of the violence or the autopsy scene or whatever it is in a negative way. So again, the book is called, it's the J. Warner Wallace, right? J for Jim. So J. Warner Wallace and Jimmy Wallace. And it's called Case Files. And with that title, notice it's plural. I'm hoping they're going to do more. I bet they do. This one is called Murder and Meaning. There's some murders that take place, and they're trying to find out who's responsible. So it's a good detective kind of story. Everybody loves a good detective story. But this is a good detective story with something to think about, not just, oh, good, they caught the bad guy. No, it goes much deeper than that, because it focuses on what makes us valuable, how should we treat others, and things like that. So there are some wonderful moral lessons in there that, as I said, I think tie in to his previous book called The Truth and True Crime. And I know you'd like that one. That one's excellent. So again, thanks. This is a little bit shorter than usual, but I just wanted to share with you this new book that's come out by the Wallaces. So thanks for being part of this podcast, and I hope you're having a good day.